Funny thing about money, people treat it like it's the prize, the finish line, the grand finale. They chase it, worship it, bleed for it, thinking it'll finally fix the cracks in their life. But what if the wealth wasn't about the money at all? What if the zeros in your bank account were just the disguise, the mask, covering something much bigger? You see, when life starts pouring resources into your hands, it's not because you're lucky, it's because you're being prepared. Prepared to carry weight most can't, to hold responsibility most would crumble under. Money. That shiny little illusion everyone's chasing, as if it holds the secret to happiness, the cure for emptiness, the bandage for every scar. They think if they can just stack enough of it, pile it high, the noise in their head will finally quiet down. But here's the thing. Money's not the destination. It's not the trophy at the end of the race. It's just a tool, a hammer, a blade. And like any tool, it's not about the thing itself. It's about who's holding it and what they decide to do with it. A hammer can build a house or smash a skull. The tool is neutral. The hand is what gives it meaning. But people miss that. They bow down to it, treat it like a god, let it dictate every choice, every relationship, every dream. They'll sacrifice their soul just to see numbers change on a screen. That's the joke. They think money will finally give them freedom, but most of the time, it becomes the chain around their neck. Because if you don't understand that money is just a means, not an end, it will eat you alive. It'll make you its slave. You'll spend your life protecting it, growing it, fearing to lose it. And the more you cling, the emptier you feel, because the tool was never supposed to own you. It was supposed to serve you. Now, when life starts setting you up to become wealthy, it's not about handing you a throne to sit on while you gloat. No, no, no. It's about giving you a weapon for the battles ahead. It's about resources, leverage, reach. Imagine being handed a sword and thinking it was a mirror. That's what most people do with money. They admire it, polish it, stare at their reflection in it. Meanwhile, the real purpose of the blade goes unused, and then they wonder why they still feel weak, insecure, hollow, because they never learned how to wield it. Money amplifies whatever is already inside of you. If you're bitter, it will magnify your bitterness. If you're generous, it will magnify your generosity. If you're lost, it will make you even more lost. That's why the tool is dangerous in the wrong hands. That's why not everyone is handed the opportunity. Some people would let it rot them from the inside out, and life knows that. But when you've been broken enough, humbled enough, stripped of everything you thought mattered, you start to see money for what it really is. Not a savior, not a master, just a weapon, just a tool. And maybe that's why it's circling you. Because you've proven you don't worship it anymore. You've stared at empty pockets, empty tables, empty nights, and realized you're still breathing. You survived without it, so you're not owned by it. That's the kind of person who can be trusted with abundance. The kind who knows it doesn't define them. You don't kneel to it, you use it. You see beyond the glitter, and understand the responsibility that comes with it. Because when the tool lands in your hands, you don't waste time building statues for yourself. You build bridges, doors, escape routes. That's the irony. The ones who used to pray just for survival, the ones who scraped and clawed and bled, they're often the ones who end up with more than they ever imagined, because they understand the cost. They understand the weight. They've felt the hunger, the lack, the silence of being overlooked. So when they finally hold the tool, they know how to wield it without letting it poison them. They know it's never about the shine, it's about the work it allows them to do. So no, wealth isn't the goal. It never was. It's not about buying your way out of pain or purchasing validation for the ghosts in your past. It's about being armed, equipped, sharpened for what comes next. It's about holding the tool steady in a world that keeps trying to break it out of your hands. Because the truth is, money won't change you. It'll expose you. It'll show everyone what was hidden in your heart all along. And that's why the focus can't be on the money itself. It has to be on the mission, the reason, the why. Otherwise, you'll end up like everyone else, bowing down to a tool while your soul starves. Every scar you carry, every sleepless night you've endured, every time you were knocked flat and still clawed your way back up. It wasn't random. It wasn't just bad luck or some cruel joke the world decided to play on you. It was training. Painful, merciless training. Life doesn't hand out responsibility to the ones who've only known comfort. No, it tests, it breaks, it strips. It makes you taste loss, rejection, betrayal. So, when the weight finally lands on your shoulders, you're strong enough to hold it without collapsing. People look at wealth like it's just about numbers, but the truth is, it's about weight. And the only way you learn to carry weight is by first being crushed under it. Think about the times you thought you were done. The nights when the silence was too loud, when the betrayal cut too deep, when the bills piled so high you couldn't see over them. You thought those moments were designed to destroy you, but really, they were chiseling you. Every crack in your pride, every bruise on your ego, every tear that burned your face, those were shaping you into someone who can handle abundance without drowning in it. Because here's the ugly truth most people can't. Most people beg for wealth, but if it ever landed in their lap, it would consume them. They'd lose themselves to greed, to arrogance, to fear of losing it all. They'd hold the tool with trembling hands until it cut them to pieces. But not you. You've been through too much. You've seen too much. You've been trained in fire. That's why you see money differently now. You don't see it as a toy. You see it as a responsibility. You know what it's like to starve, so you'll never waste the bread. You know what it's like to be forgotten, so you'll never ignore the ones who need help. You know what it's like to be lied to, so you'll use truth like a weapon. That's what the struggles were for. To burn the illusions out of you, to rip the navy off your skin, to carve out the parts of you that would have been corrupted by success. It's almost funny, isn't it? The very things you begged to escape, the very seasons you cursed, were the exact things that made you ready. The pain you thought was punishment was preparation. The rejection you thought proved you weren't good enough was actually proving you were too good to settle. Every closed door, every delay, every heartbreak, it was all part of the conditioning. And while everyone else was chasing shortcuts, you were being built in silence, in shadows, in places no one applauded. And that's why when the responsibility arrives, you'll be able to handle it. You won't crumble under the pressure because you've already carried worse. Responsibility always demands evidence, and your life is the evidence. The scars prove your strength. The losses prove your resilience. The nights you almost quit prove your endurance. Every test you passed, even when you didn't know it was a test, is the reason you're being handed more. Because life doesn't trust the untested. It doesn't hand over weight to people who've only known ease. It looks for the ones who've been through storms and didn't drown. The ones who've been cut and didn't bleed out. The ones who've been abandoned and still kept walking. That's who gets chosen. That's who gets trusted with more. And let's be honest, responsibility is heavier than wealth. Anyone can count money. Anyone can spend it, flaunt it, waste it. But responsibility, that takes guts. That takes discipline. That takes the kind of backbone you don't grow in a soft life. You only get it by being pressed, crushed, ground down until all that's left is something unbreakable. That's why you've been through what you've been through. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't cruelty. It was proof. Proof that you could carry the load when it came. Proof that you could hold the tool steady when it was finally placed in your hands. So every failure, training. Every betrayal, training. Every moment you thought you were buried alive, training. Life has been stacking weight on your back for years, just to prove you could stand under it. And the funny part, you thought you were cursed. You thought you were forgotten. But the whole time, you were being forged, prepared, positioned. Because responsibility doesn't fall on the comfortable. It falls on the ones who've been prepared to carry it, no matter how much it costs. Loss. That ugly little companion that shows up uninvited, takes everything you thought you couldn't live without, and leaves you gasping in the rubble. People curse it, spit at it, scream at the sky, asking why it had to happen to them. But here's the cruel little twist. Loss is often the doorway to fortune. Not just the kind you can touch. Not just the kind you can count, but the kind that shifts your entire identity. You see, nothing teaches you the value of gain, quite like being stripped bare. Nothing makes you ready to handle abundance like tasting the sharp sting of lack. Without it, wealth would be poison. With it, wealth becomes a tool you're strong enough to wield. Think back to the times you thought the world ended. When the job slipped through your fingers. When the relationship shattered. When the people you trusted most stabbed you in the back. Those weren't just random tragedies. They were demolitions. Controlled demolitions. Everything that could have distracted you, destroyed you. or diluted you had to be ripped away, so that when fortune finally arrived, you'd actually recognize it. Otherwise, you would have wasted it, taken it for granted, treated it like play money in the hands of a child. Loss teaches appreciation. Loss sharpens vision. Loss carves out space for the new by clearing away the rot of the old. The irony is, everyone begs for gain, but nobody volunteers for loss. They want the prize without the stripping. They want the feast without the hunger. But it doesn't work that way. Without hunger, food means nothing. Without darkness, light doesn't blind. Without emptiness, abundance has no weight. That's why loss comes first. It builds the contrast. It breaks your illusions that comfort is permanent, that people will always stay, that your plans will always work. It smashes the fragile glass house you thought was solid, and when you're standing there barefoot among the shards, you finally learn what's real. And maybe that's the real gift. Loss forces you to see what you never wanted to face. It shows you who's really in your corner. It shows you what you've been leaning on that was never strong enough to hold you. It shows you that your own strength runs deeper than you ever imagined. You thought you couldn't survive without that job, that person, that safety net. But here you are, still breathing, still moving, still alive. That realization alone is worth more than gold, because it means nothing external truly controls you. That's the kind of realization that makes you unstoppable when the gain finally comes. But here's the twist most miss. Fortune doesn't replace what was lost. It doesn't heal the wounds. It doesn't bring people back. It doesn't erase the scars. No, it builds on top of them. The scars stay, the pain lingers, but they become the foundation. And that foundation is unshakable because it's been tested by fire. That's why your fortune isn't fragile. It's anchored in everything you thought was going to destroy you. It's rooted in nights of crying, in days of scraping by, in the silence of being unseen. No storm can wash away what's built on that. Loss also gives you empathy. Without it, wealth would make you arrogant, untouchable, blind. But when you've known what it feels like to have nothing, to be nothing in the eyes of others, you'll never forget it. And when the tables turn, you won't look down on the ones who are still struggling. You'll remember. You'll remember what it was like to wonder if you'd ever make it. You'll remember the nights of doubt, the mornings of despair, and that memory will keep you human when the wealth threatens to make you a monster. So when fortune finally arrives, you don't flaunt it. You don't cling to it like a scared child. You carry it with reverence, with respect, with a seriousness most people never understand. Because you know the cost. You know what it took to get here. You know the blood, the loss, the emptiness that built the ground you're standing on. That's what makes you different. That's what makes you worthy of it. Not the fact that you asked for it, but the fact that you survived everything that should have broken you long before it came. That's the paradox. Loss feels like death, but it's really rebirth. It feels like the end, but it's always the beginning. The ashes you thought you were buried under turn out to be the soil you were planted in. And when you rise, when fortune finally finds you, you'll know why it had to happen in that order. Gain without loss is hollow, but gain after loss, that's unshakable, untouchable, unstoppable. Character. That's the word nobody likes to talk about when it comes to money. They'll chatter on about strategies, investments, get-rich schemes, but they never stop to think about the thing money always drags out of the shadows, who you really are. Because money doesn't change people. It doesn't turn angels into devils or fools into kings. It simply rips the mask off and shows the world what was hiding under the smile. It's like a magnifying glass. Small cracks become canyons. Tiny sparks become wildfires. If you're greedy, money will make you insatiable. If you're fearful, money will make you paranoid. If you're insecure, money will turn you into a puppet dancing for applause. That's why it's dangerous to hand it to someone who hasn't been tested. They think the money will finally give them confidence, peace, or freedom. But it won't. It will simply multiply whatever's already inside. You see, wealth doesn't create, it exposes. And exposure is brutal. It tears away excuses, strips away disguises, and reveals the truth. That's why some people rise when they get it, and others collapse under the very same weight. Not because of the money itself, but because of what the mirror reflected back at them. And that's the cruel little joke, isn't it? People spend their lives praying for riches, not realizing that what they're actually begging for is exposure. They're asking the world to take a magnifying glass to their soul. They think it'll be all parties and champagne, when in reality it's sleepless nights and a spotlight they can't hide from. Suddenly every crack in their integrity, every weakness in their discipline, every demon they thought they'd buried, it all comes crawling out. The money just gives it a stage. But when you've been stripped already, when life has already dragged you through humiliation, loss, rejection, you've got nothing left to hide. That's when wealth becomes something different. It's no longer about flaunting, it's about using. Because you've been humbled, you've been broken, you've been exposed long before the spotlight. So when the money arrives, it can't corrupt you the same way. It can't inflate you into some hollow caricature. It just becomes fuel for the mission you already carry. The rich man who was never tested is a disaster waiting to happen. He builds towers, but they collapse because the foundation is rotten. He gathers friends, but they're only there for the shine. He gains power, but it eats him alive because his character was never strong enough to wield it. That's why you've been through the darkness, the stripping, the nights where you thought you wouldn't survive. Not because you were forgotten, but because you were being prepared. Your character had to be forged in shadows, so that when the light of wealth hits you, it doesn't blind you. And maybe that's the strangest part. Money doesn't give you power. It reveals whether you ever had power in the first place. It tests whether your heart is iron or glass, whether your motives are steady or selfish. Most people fail that test. But you've already taken it over and over again, in ways nobody saw. When you chose integrity even when it cost you. When you kept moving forward, even when you had nothing. When you refused to become bitter, even when betrayal felt like the only option. Those were the tests. And every time you passed, your character was being strengthened. So when the money comes, it won't own you. It won't twist you. It won't expose rot, because the rot has already been burned out. What it will do is amplify your strength, your discipline, your vision. It will give your values a megaphone. It will shine a light on the resilience that was carved into you through years of struggle. That's why the money is coming. Not because you need it to become someone, but because you've already become someone who can handle it. The wealth just makes it visible to the world. Control. That's the word everyone whispers about, but pretends they don't crave. People chase money because they think it buys them freedom. But what they're really after is control. Control over their time, over their choices, over the way the world bends around them. They want to stop bowing to alarms, bosses, bills, debts, and all the little chains that keep them crawling. They want to stand up and finally dictate their own terms. But here's the twist. Control isn't given, it's tested. And before you get to command anything outside of you, you have to prove you can command yourself. Money in the hands of someone who can't control their own impulses is like handing fire to a child. They'll burn everything down. Relationships, opportunities, their own sanity, because they never learn discipline. They want the world to obey them, but they can't even say no to their own cravings. They want financial empires, but can't control the urge to binge, waste, procrastinate. They scream for freedom, but they're enslaved by their own appetites. That's why most people will never touch real wealth. Not because they're not smart enough or lucky enough, but because they lack mastery over themselves. Life is cruel that way. It gives you a little, just enough to see what you'll do, just enough to tempt you. And most people fail right there. They blow it, misuse it, and then cry about being cursed. But it wasn't a curse, it was a test. You wanted control. And the universe handed you a fragment to see if you'd abuse it. And if you did, it was ripped away before it destroyed you completely. People call it bad luck, but it was mercy. Because real wealth in the hands of someone who can't control themselves isn't a blessing. It's a weapon aimed at their own head. But when you've been forced to discipline yourself, when you've had to stretch every dollar, control every choice, silence every temptation, you start building something rare. Self-command. The kind of power most will never touch. And that power makes you dangerous because now you're not ruled by impulses. You're ruled by intention. Money doesn't own you. You own it. Success doesn't carry you. You steer it. And when you've proven that kind of mastery in the shadows, then and only then do you get to hold wealth without it consuming you. The funny thing about control is that people think it's about dominance over others, when really it's about dominance over chaos. Wealth magnifies chaos. Suddenly you're surrounded by options, temptations, distractions. It's a circus, and most fall right into the trap, chasing everything, grabbing at anything, spreading themselves so thin they lose everything. But when you've already learned how to anchor yourself, how to stay steady when the noise gets loud, that chaos becomes fuel. Where others are scattered, you're focused. Where others drown, you build ships. Where others lose themselves, you sharpen yourself. That's why the journey has been so suffocating, so restrictive. You've been forced to master patience when all you wanted was speed. You've been pushed to say no when all you wanted was to indulge. You've been tested with silence when all you wanted was applause. That wasn't punishment, it was training. Because if you can't handle control in the dark, you'll never handle it in the spotlight. Wealth doesn't change that. It just amplifies the stakes. So when the money arrives, you won't be like the rest. You won't chase every shiny object. You won't burn yourself out. You won't crumble under the weight of excess. You'll be steady, precise, deliberate. Every move will have purpose. Every choice will have calculation. That's control. And that's why the wealth is being placed in your hands. Not because you begged for it, but because you were forged into someone who can wield it without being destroyed by it.